Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer, here with Mike Gallagher to walk you through this oddly scheduled three-game slate, three West Coast games. The West Coasters, it's their night. NBA lock at 10 p.m. Eastern time tonight. A great night to get an early dinner with your significant other if you're still living the NBA schedule life like myself and Mike Gallagher. Mike, how are you doing on this fine Thursday?
Yeah, man. Maybe watch some football today. Who's even playing for football today? Is it
The Packers and the
Pa-
Titans.
okay?
Yeah, I only know this because I have a lot of Titans division bets that I
Ah,
started jamming in at very juicy odds last week. That I am now sweating each and every week because Leonie told me it was EV and to put my life savings on it. So if the Titans do not win the division, I will be broadcasting from Third Avenue without a home next year.
all right, go Titans. Yeah, I don't have a lot of Packers. I tend to fade the old quarterbacks in fantasy, so it's kind of
Nice,
kind of worked out this year. But yeah, pretty
nice.
pretty boring injury stuff. But let's get to it.
Well, before we get to it, let's remind everybody that this show is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. They have daily NBA snake drafts for money running in addition to many formats of NFL contests. Still running for huge prizes. If you're playing NBA Pick'em, in-season subscribers can use our tools to compare ETR projections to Underdog's fantasy Pick'em games. If you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, use promo code ETR for a matching deposit bonus up to $100. It's promo code ETR at underdogfantasy.com. All right, let's get into the injury side of things. Just 3 games tonight, but the NBA never relents. Plenty of injuries to talk about. And let's start with the Clippers, which somehow, even on a slate where the earliest start time is 10 o'clock, we might be stuck in a position where we don't know Clippers information as the last game on the slate. Paul George is questionable. Kawhi Leonard is questionable. Luke Kennard is doubtful. What are your thoughts on the availability of Kawhi? Does that midday questionable upgrade suggest concern for Paul George?
Hmm.
What are your thoughts here on the Clippers?
Yeah, that was my read. Kennard being doubtful, pulled his uh, calf in the first 3 minutes of the last game. Paul George dinged his hand up. Probably okay, but it's the Clippers. And I mean, you said it. Slate starts at 10, and the Clippers still don't start. Very much like the 15 minute staggered. Of course, the Clippers were last. So yeah, they're playing against the only team that has a back to back. So it's I don't have a great read on. I never have a great read on the Clippers, other than Kennard. But yeah, it's a little concerning to see him on there. Obviously, if he does, if without Kennard and Paul George does go, interesting choice because that Powell lineup that they were running out there was one of the worst lineups in the league. I don't know if they want to go back to it. We saw John Wall start in the second half after Kennard. I wouldn't be shocked if they go that way again. Could certainly get away with it against a fairly small Pistons team. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Wall get a lot of minutes here. We've seen his minutes ramp up, starting to get upper 20s now. They're not in a back to back. I think John Wall could really benefit almost no matter how this shakes out with Kennard out.
The interesting thing about Wall last game is he only played like 8 first half minutes in that game, and then
Mm-hmm.
he played 19 in the second half, something like that. So it seemed like, and this happens often with Tyler rotations, it seems like they found a lineup that was making a run in the third quarter. They kept it going deep into the fourth quarter, and as a result, the minutes kind of got wacky for some of these guys. That 8 first half minutes was alarming for me on the John Wall side of things, even with Kennard playing doubtful. But let's start with the Kawhi aspect of things. If Kawhi is available to play, we've seen some very weird ways that they've managed his minutes with like not playing him until deep into the second quarter and then allowing them to play some in the second half so he could potentially close and different things like that. What are your thoughts on Kawhi in terms of what a minutes limit might look like and what the rotation might look like as well?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing you ask yourself is, do they run it back with the bringing it off the bench? Then the next thing you ask yourself, did that work? And the answer is no. So, definition of insanity, right? So maybe they just go and start him, try something different. It's because that thing didn't work. So, I don't know. I think it makes sense to start him just because it was such a failure the last time. But we know the minutes can be capped. We know there's like probably no chance he's playing like 23 or more. I didn't see where we have him for minutes, but I think like
We have an
20 would be.
18. You have him at
18, yeah. I was going to say 20 is probably on the high end. So that sounds about right. So not a big impact. Good.
There was a report that he was starting to play 5-on-5 earlier this week or last week. The weeks all kind of blend together to me at this point. But the point being, I don't think this questionable tag is completely out of nowhere. It feels a little bit out of nowhere, but there was some reporting that suggested he was working his way back. Obviously, from a DFS perspective, unless the price has dropped dramatically from where it was early in the season, I don't think he'd be in play. But we saw he was productive in those limited minutes and takes away usage from other guys. I think his availability would certainly make it a risk that Robert Covington even sees the floor, as his minutes have been really trending down quite a bit of late. And, we'll see. I kind of doubt they have both Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. I think one of them is going to play, but I don't think both of them are going to play. Is kind of the way that I'm reading this situation. But we'll see. Obviously, the matchup with Detroit is great, and one we'll talk about more in depth on the DFS show side of things. But the right now, Marcus Morris, Zubats, and Paul George, really the only guys you can trust for consistent, high end playing time on the Clippers. And then John Wall's had a pretty tight range where it's been 21 to 26, 27, 28, somewhere around there. So you kind of know with those guys. The rest of the roster, you have no idea. And on a 3-game slate, that variance can create opportunity, which we'll talk about on the DFS show.
Should add too with Paul George. Who would start if they do start Wall for Kennard? Do you go man there? You kind of don't need more scoring. I think you'd rather have a defender there. So I think that would probably make sense if everybody's out. Yeah.
I could definitely see that. I think Wall and Jackson starting alongside each other is more likely in an everybody out situation. I think, one of the two guys playing, I think it's more likely that they slide in Terrence Mann into the starting lineup and keep the rotation that way. I could still end up closing with both those guys, but I think they'd start there. Okay, on to Portland. Yusuf Nurkic questionable again, as is Keon Johnson. In the absence of Nurkic, we've seen Drew Eubanks start, but not potential, not picking up huge fantasy appeal, even in kind of a starting role. What are your thoughts here? It's a small slate. Nurkic has been in and out. What are your thoughts on Nurkic's availability tonight?
Yeah, just returned last game from an adductor strain. Looked horrible. Pirtle had probably his best game of his life against Nurk Daddy. We saw him not close. We saw Drew Eubanks take over the game as a screen and roll man, defending, rebounding. He just classic, what you want Nurk to be. So not going to force it. I think they've got enough depth. They got Justice Winslow back, who didn't play in the last game from an illness, so you've got depth there. I think they just sit him with how. I mean, it was one of the worst games I've ever seen him play. He just wasn't agile. He was a step late on rotation. I think they just sit him out. It is a different injury, so it sounds minor, but it's no reason to play him. He probably wouldn't get a big minute just because he has to look better. If he looks anything close to where he is, his minutes could get cut pretty hard. Keon, probably out. I don't think they really need him. They're starting to trust Shaedon Sharpe a little bit more. Maybe a little bit more Nas Little, but we're seeing a lot of minutes out of Dame, a lot of minutes out of Simons, Hart, Grant. Those guys all play so much. So certainly not an impactful injury either way.
Yeah, Nurk is one of those guys that actually has a pretty wide disparity in terms of how he plays when you see it with injury, but you also see it with when he's fatigued physically. When the dude is fresh, he looks amazing. He's just not fresh for much of the season. Usually something comes up and wear and tear and kind of wears him down. Unfortunately, that looks like it might be the case of late. On to Sacramento, where Keegan Murray is questionable. Left last game early, did not return in the second half. They had the game in hand against the Brooklyn Nets here. What are your thoughts on Keegan's availability tonight?
Yeah, pulled us back pretty clear. I think he's probably closer to doubtful here. We probably won't get this news till late. Maybe they will not early, but I mean, Terrence Davis just out of nowhere goes completely off for 31. They definitely could use him in this matchup. So I think he would get the start again. Give yourself another on-ball defender with size. Throw him on Devin Vassell. I think that makes the most sense. So I would expect him to start. Probably see a little bit more minutes for Davion, just a little bit. Maybe to bring Dellavedova in or something. But I think that doesn't really matter much. Monk would benefit as well. More Herder. Herder's been fantastic. You'll hear him. We talked about him on a pod that'll be coming out shortly. But Terrence Davis would pick up almost all of Keegan's minutes, I would say.
Interesting, because I mean, Terrence Davis lit it up, rewarded people
Yeah.
who had some. I was really surprised. I guess our ceiling projections had like a decent number on Terrence Davis because some people in our Discord had played Terrence Davis that night, and I
Yeah.
was like, how did anyone get to Terrence Davis? And they're like, oh, the projections liked him, and I was like, really?
Yeah.
Wasn't on my radar.
And we actually
So
just got news that he's unlikely now. Shout out to Underdog. I don't
that
know what the source is, but
that Keegan's unlikely.
yeah,
Yeah,
which makes
so
sense because he was
we'll
it looked pretty clear this is a real injury.
we'll make projection adjustments on that front. All right, and then the last injury situation to talk through on this slate is the Pistons, where they continue to be without Cade Cunningham. They're also potentially without Corey Joseph as well tonight. Has he been ruled out as well?
Questionable. I don't think he's playing
Okay.
regardless. They're really comfortable with Alec Burks. Actually,
Okay.
some interesting quotes from Dwayne Casey after last game saying they want to ramp up Alec Burks' minutes in like a big way. It sounds like they want to have him be like a true 6-man, upper 20s minutes, big role. We saw him play really well in the last game. Casey really likes what he could bring to this team. So curious to see what his price tag is for DFS. He's someone I'm definitely looking at today. No Stewart. So we saw Sadiq Bey replace him in the starting lineup after getting benched. Shocking news on that one, but expect him to come back, pick up minutes, and get staggered into that second unit with Burks. Casey also said they want to work on that chemistry together. Burks kind of being a lane filler driver, kick out game with Bey. So expecting those guys to play a pretty good bit.
So Marvin Bagley slides over to the 5. Jalen
Mm-hmm.
Duren backing him up would be the assumption. And I guess the rotation now looks like essentially Killian at the 1, backed up by Burks, it seems like.
I think it was a little bit of Diallo backing. I didn't check, but I think that
Okay.
makes sense. They kind of like Diallo for defense, Killing for defense. Ivy being the offensive guy with Burks being the offensive guy behind him.
Okay.
I think I haven't researched that yet, but I think that
and
makes
then
sense.
and then Duran Noel at the bigs, and then Livers, Bogdanovich, and Bay now as a 9th man. The question is, does a 10th man get into the mix? Does Kevin Knox get into the rotation? Does Nerlens Noel get into the rotation? And they just, have Bagley start at the 5, but then slide over to the 4 in backup spots. Do you think?
I kind of lost your audio at the end. It could be Corey Joseph too. I hope you could hear me okay. But yeah, Corey Joseph could also just play behind Ivy too, and just fill those 9 minutes as well.
Okay. But do you think it's more likely to be 10-man rotation than 9-man rotation tonight?
I think so. Yeah, I think they'll throw somebody in there for the 10th.
Okay, cool. Good to know. All right. That is going to do it for a short edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. As always, if you are interested in more of our content behind the paywall, check out on the subscribe tab on establishedrun.com for more information about packages that we're offering. Myself and Mike Gallagher will be behind the paywall at 5 o'clock Eastern tonight talking this 3-game slate. We also have the props package, all the information that you need if you would like to join us for the premium ride along the season. If you're uninterested in paying us your hard-earned dollars, you could at least give us your hard-earned clicks. You could subscribe to this YouTube channel, get notifications whenever we go live, and also remember to smash. You don't need to press. You don't need to gently hold down. You just need to smash that like button to help circulate this video and keep us providing this free content that you're enjoying. As always, feed the algorithm, feed yourselves. Nom, 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 nom. We'll see you tomorrow.